welcome to Art Related Noise, the podcast of the Enter Gallery in Brighton. I'm Stuart Holdsworth from Inspiring City, and I am with Dave White. Dave? How are you doing?
I'm very good, apart from melting. How are you doing?
I tell you what, it is a bit hot, isn't it? It's not weather for me. I don't know what it's like for you, but this sort of weather is absolutely crazy for me.
It is crazy. I mean, wearing a full respirator and painting, it's a bit sticky, to say the least. But anyway, we'll grumble in the winter and we'll grumble in the summer. That's how it goes. So.
We would not be British if we did not start a conversation and grumble about the weather, no matter what it is.
It's our birthright, I'm afraid.
We're talking. It's great to have you on the podcast, by the way, because you've been with Enter Gallery for so long now. And every single time I go in there, I can see your fantastic animals or birds or whatever it is that you're doing. It's really sort of the eye-catching stuff that you do. And what got you? Where did the relationship start with Enter? What got you going with those guys?
So basically, it was. I mean, our history goes way back. I think it was actually 2007 when we first started working together. And prior to that, I'd been doing a whole series of works based on sneakers. And then the very first edition that I self-published was of a 38 Saturday Night Special, which is a 70s handgun. And that was the first silkscreen we released. And that was kind of our little kind of journey, really. And then since then, working with Enter, previous, obviously, Art Republic, it's been, we're hand in hand. And, I love working with them. And it's always been, a real treat to kind of show with them, really.
Because you've been with them so long, it's like you've grown with each other. I'm getting the impression of. So Enter have really sort of grown into the great gallery that they are, and you as an artist as well, working with a gallery like that, has just managed to grow yourself.
Well, it's kind of interesting because I'll distinctly remember a conversation I had with Lawrence, who's obviously the owner of Enter Gallery, and we were in the London Art Fair. And prior to this, like when I was doing my degree at John Moore's a long time ago, I kind of was doing animals. And I ended up having quite a lot of early success with them. And then I moved away and I kind of did the sneakers and I did some other things as well. And I said to Lawrence at the London Art Fair, I'm going to start doing these tigers and hummingbirds. And he's like, oh yeah? And I'm like, yeah. And then here we are. And it's been a really, really interesting journey with them. And as I say, kind of all the way through the kind of last decade, they've always exhibited basically all the animals that I've done. And there's a really lovely history there. And we should do a book or something really, but it's all to be had.
I think that'd be a good book, actually, if you look at the journey of the gallery and all the artists that have been through it. And I mean, part of the reason we talk is you've got a show there. I mean, dependent on when anyone listens to this or watches it, it's on the 30th of July, 2021. Tell me about the show and what it's about.
Okay, so I'm really excited, as I say, to be doing a kind of an exhibition with them, the last signing kind of thing where I was in person, Enter. It was one of the stags we released way back. I think it must be 2017 or something. So it's a real pleasure to go back down. And obviously, with everything everybody's been through in the past 18 months, it's really lovely timing. And the collection is entitled Freedom. And it's funny that Boris kind of dropped that title. Previous to what I've been doing, I released a couple of images of doves. One was called Hope and one was called Love. And I guess what these are about for me is literally about how we all feel about each other, and how this horrible thing we've all been through has really crushed our kind of souls and our ways of living and everything we take for granted. And I've explored hummingbirds for the past decade. There's something that I adore. There's something that I see all the time when I go visiting places. And I just wanted to create something. I mean, I was busy painting dinosaurs at the time. Flash of inspiration just came, because this is the first piece that I've ever released where there's way more than one image, because usually it's one image isolated. So anyway, this piece is called Freedom, and there's 5 hummingbirds on this one thing. And I guess I just wanted to make something that was beautiful and bright and happy, and there's nothing more alive and nothing more vibrant than when you see a hummingbird. And I guess it's the optimism, hopefully, that we're all starting to feel as restrictions are kind of lifting in a way. So that's what it's all about, really. So I just wanted to make something that really spoke to people and how they feel.
So with the hummingbirds, the piece is it a selection of pieces, or is it one piece that you're doing as a print release? What are people going to see when they go in there?
So when they walk in, I mean, I would class it as like a pop-up exhibition. So I've made 5 original watercolors of 5 separate hummingbirds, and they're obviously going to be for sale on the evening. Then there is a couple of editions that we're releasing. So what we always tend to do is we always make a standard size edition of 50, and then we always make something like super, super beautiful and very bespoke. So that is an XL version of the Freedom piece, and each hummingbird's hand finished with 24 karat gold leaf, and there's 30 of those. Alongside that, we're releasing one of the hummingbirds by himself on a standard edition of 50, and again on an XL, which is hand finished with 24 karat gold leaf. I mean, I use precious metals, and I use things like diamond dust in my work to basically emphasize the beauty and the scarcity, and that just kind of underlines all the animal works that I've ever made, really.
What got you interested in painting animals and birds in the first place? What led you to that?
I love them. End of. I mean, you know, I can distinctly remember my very, very first visit to a zoo, which is my local zoo called Chester Zoo, when I was in Liverpool. And I've got a photographic memory. So it's kind of, you know, when you are that overwhelmed by animals, it just has never lost me, to be honest with you. I absolutely, whether it's where I live here, I get to see deer and I see foxes and owls and bats and everything every day. And it never, ever once does it not stop me in my tracks. And, you know, you go to a zoo or a wildlife park or safari, or you see something in the wild, and it's so easy to forget these things are part of our world. We're all iPhone 12s, and kind of the world is so fast, and you forget that we share this place with these things. And my work, I've said it many times, isn't just paintings of pretty animals. It's all about raising awareness to how we're just absolutely destroying them, and it breaks my heart. And any awareness I get through my work, either through the work itself or working with charities, is something that is absolutely the forefront. So in answer to your question, I just love them.
You know, funny you should say about Chester Zoo, because that, if anyone grew up at a certain time in the north of England, you were probably going to have a school trip to Chester Zoo, and you'd look forward to that trip.
Totally.
Is that what you did? Was it a school trip, or was it just like?
No, I mean, it's my mum and dad. I mean, you know, again, I went to a place called Knowsley Safari Park.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's great as well.
Amazing stories. I mean, I'll have to just run you this, whether it makes the cut or it doesn't. When I was studying at John Moores, you're a student, I was spending all my money on materials and stuff. So long before the internet, and I wrote to them and said, listen, is there any chance I can get a pass free to come in as a student? Because I used to go there and draw all the time. So anyway, they wrote back to me and said, yeah, there's a pass, come when you want. And I basically used to go every Sunday morning at 9 in the morning, and the punters wouldn't go in until 11. So I'd have 2 hours in the whole park to just draw. I was drawing this hyacinth macaw, this beautiful blue and yellow macaw. And this lady came behind me, so obviously the place had opened. And she goes with a little baby, she goes, hello, Mr. Parrot. And this parrot goes, you come here often? I looked at her, and she looked at me, and we were just blown away. And this bird had a really distinctive mark on its shoulder. Every time I would go up to this thing and I would just talk to it, and just look at me to say, nah, not doing that again. Unbelievable.
That's a relationship. That's amazing. That's absolutely amazing. That's a relationship. I suppose you got to know, when you go into some place like that, I suppose you get to know the different animals, don't you? You get to know the characters of them. If you're going, time and time and time again. I mean, would you go back to the same animal and keep drawing them? Would you spend time with them in that way, or?
It would depend what I was doing, but exactly like you're saying. So, I mean, obviously a lion looks like a lion and a penguin looks like a penguin. But as you say, when you get to know them and you kind of it's almost like, you know, bird spotting or train spotting or something, you know, by the distinctive characteristics, whether it's the movement or the plumage or the scars or whatever it is. And I would, you know, I used to go there, like I say, all the time, and I would just fill endless sketchbooks and stuff, and it was amazing. And I funnily enough, I went up not so long ago for my goddaughter's kind of just, you know, to go and visit her, and we went up to Chester Zoo, and this amazing lion was there. And I did a piece on him, so it was like going back in time for me. Like, it was amazing.
Fantastic, isn't it? Yeah, I was researching a piece. I saw David Wynn, don't you? If ever come across him, but he does sort of sculptural pieces, and he's got a piece of Crystal Palace. It's called Gorilla, and
oh yeah,
doing the 50s. And he went to London Zoo, and he just goes back and back and back. And his process was just studying that gorilla, so that the final piece was just a amalgamation of that study over years studying, just to capture the character, capturing the essence of that fine animal.
Well, that's the crux of what I do, to be perfectly honest with you. I mean, there's not far from where we live is a place called Monkey World, and I did a whole series on like chimpanzees a couple of years ago and silverbacks. I went to Bristol Zoo and I got access to go behind the scenes. There's an amazing silverback there called Jock, like proper old boy. He's massive, and I got to go, obviously not in the cage with him, but I got to go behind the glass and see all behind the scenes, and I spent 3 hours with him. And that intimacy and that contact that you have in the eyes and all of the characteristics that you see, that's why I always revisit specific things. So like great white sharks, gorillas, hummingbirds, tigers, there's always, I call them icons in a way, and it's like they're things that I always revisit, because when I see them, I'll see something I haven't seen before, and that's what makes me snap and want to depict an image. So yeah, it's really wonderful thing to do.
So go back to the hummingbirds then. So tell me more about the hummingbirds. What first inspired you about the hummingbirds, and what you know, why hummingbirds for this particular piece?
Well, I mean, hummingbirds in general. I mean, I did a whole series way back when, based on Americana. So it was like I was really interested in kind of like Native American Indians and kind of like their battle dress and kind of all of that. And then I was looking into spirit guides. And when you do a little bit more research into that, the hummingbird is one of the most powerful spirit guides that there is. It's just, that's the thing. And it's like something so tiny with so much presence and so much power. And then when you see them in the wild, or you see them in a zoo and you get them fluttering around your head, and the noise they make, and they feed off it, and the color, it's like, it's a complete overwhelm of the senses. It's like you just can't help but be absolutely like literally overwhelmed by them. And for me, it's just capturing, and especially with these new ones I'm doing now, like, as I say, the collection's called Freedom. I mean, when you see the wings move so quickly, I think it's something like 660 beats per minute, their wings move. And when you actually, like I say, see them in the flesh, it doesn't look like they're moving. It's just, they're just there, like zipping about. So what this collection is about, as I say, is about capturing that incredible freedom that they have. And the wings, especially on this series, were what I was focusing on. So I'm hoping, I mean, movement has always been a part of my work, you know, to kind of capture the character, the dynamism, you know, whatever it is that I see, they have to look alive, they have to look animated. And that's something that is very different when you do a tiger, or you do a T-Rex, or you do a great white shark, and you do a hummingbird. It's like, they're all very, very different how you have to depict them, for me anyway, to get that character around. So these are just literally, I'm trying to just get that, where you see one and it just is there, and it's just about to zip off. And then again,
I was going to ask you about that, you know, in terms of the movement, because when I see your pieces, that's what I take away from them. You know, I can sort of sense what you're trying to do. You know, it's a living image really that's on a print or on canvas, what have you. But just because of the way that I think you paint, it's like a sort of mixture between, you know, figurative and abstract to some degree. There's energy going around it. Can you tell me a bit more about your process? How do you get that effect?
I mean, basically, like the processes are very, that's like asking how Michael Jordan throws a ball. He just does it, and I just do it. And if I'm honest with you, the first and foremost thing I would say is you never stop learning. You never stop challenging yourself. I don't anyway. And that's the beauty of it for me. But I guess you've kind of touched on it. If my work was hyper real, it wouldn't look like my work. If my work was way too abstract, it wouldn't look like my work. So it's almost like I always say, it's like walking a tightrope. It's like you go one way or the other, you've had it. So it's like, it's that moment of trying to get that absolute perfect 50-50 balance of spontaneity and realism. And I know that's a very big contradiction in terms, but that's what it's about. And I listen to, like, jungle when I work. I don't think about painting when I'm painting at all. And I've said it before, the only time I think about painting is when my brain says to me, oh, maybe you should put a bit of purple there or put a line there. As soon as my brain starts playing that game, I'm done, and I'll just put the canvas or the watercolor off the easel and I'm done, and I don't look at it again. So it's like, it's very much a meditative state for me. I know what I'm doing and I know what I want to do, but I don't think about it when I'm doing it, if that makes any sense.
You're going into a flow.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. It's like, it's that perfect part when your brain and your hand and your eye are completely coordinated, and you're just in the present with what you're doing, and you're not really, or I'm not really, like, as I say, sitting back and then, looking at it and going, oh, I'll put a bit there. That's not how I work. Once I start work, there's a very long process. When I do like works on canvas or whatever, I'll do all my drawings. I'll go to all these places, take lots of photographs, lots of drawings. Then I'll do like a very spontaneous but very accurate underpainting, and then that's built up and built up and built up. But when it comes to the day when I'm going to actually go in for it, when I'm going to paint it, I'll spend like 3 hours mixing all my colours. They're all in kind of mixing bowls, and then I'm off. And I don't I say that, I used to not stop until it was finished. But the last couple of years, because the works have been getting bigger in scale, it's disciplined me in the sense that I have to do it over a few days. So anyway, yeah, that's how it goes.
Well, it's fascinating. It sounds there's a lot of the stuff going on. So the preparation being really, really important, not in terms of, you talked about the sketching, but 3 hours on the colours as well. Just, do you find that that's a meditative state as well? And you focus on that, on the colours, just getting the colours right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, obviously, like with a lot of the things that I do, I mean, these things aren't straight out the tube colours. Yeah. I mean, to get very specific tones and kind of like hues of specific animals, I have to spend that time mixing. But my point is, where you touched on it about being in a flow, I don't want to stop mixing colours when I'm painting. Once I'm in that relationship with that canvas, then I'm kind of in that zone. So, but I do find it very meditative mixing it in my respirator with 120 degrees.
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? I mean, you touched on the respirator before. I mean, you use a lot of different, I think, oils, I think you use in your work, yeah. Watercolors, you use lots of different elements within your work. So that the fumes must get quite, there must be quite a lot of fumes, basically.
There's very much a lot of fumes. I mean, I've got extraction and stuff like that. I use some very nasty stuff. And if I didn't use extraction, I wouldn't be here. So at the end of the day, you've got to safety first, have to wear gloves. I mean, it's all nasty, nasty stuff. But like I say, I mean, watercolor and oil are the absolute polar opposite of materials. And, when I did my degree, I was in there at 8 in the morning and I didn't leave till 9 at night. And that's who I am as a person. I'm incredibly disciplined and I've never, ever lost that. So it's like the last couple of years, I've been really pushing the boundaries of what I do. So I make oil paint move like watercolor. I'll make watercolor in places move like oils. And it's like a real juxtaposition of media. And I guess, like I say, that just comes with experience, and you never, ever stop learning. And that's the love of what I do, really.
I suppose that's led you to where you are now, because I think that sort of constant learning approach is really, supported you throughout your career. But now when you look back and you can see, actually, in order to create the work that I want to create, these things have to be in place so that I can then get in flow. is you know that's the result of years of doing it, I suppose. Just knowing that in order to get the best result for me, I need to be in there and no distractions. It just has to happen, and it has to happen whilst I'm listening to my music and I'm just doing my thing.
Well, that's it. I mean, I don't get disturbed when I'm working, and the phone's off, everything's off, and it's kind of like that's how it is. I mean, I don't have a clock in here. I just do what I do, and I'm my own worst critic. I mean, at the end of the day, I very, very rarely lose one. Sometimes it does happen. I go past the post, something's a bit overworked, my intention isn't how I wanted it, and I'm the kind of person that literally it would be utterly pointless for me to just take it, go back to my home, play some video games, get on with my day. It's like being a painter is a crazy thing because you are completely obsessive with what you do, and it's a quite intense thing to be one. Any painter or any artist will know exactly what I'm talking about. But to kind of clarify to people who aren't, it's like if you don't get what you want, it's only down to you. So if I lose one, I'll put another piece of paper up, I'll put another canvas up, and I won't leave until I've got what I want. And that's something I had when I was 16, and that's something I have now being 50. So whatever. I love what I do.
Oh, it comes across that you absolutely energy is clear. You love what you're doing. I want to ask you and go a little bit back in time because you touched on it earlier, but you talked about the sneaker art. So how did that all come about? Because we're talking like back in the early 2000s now, aren't you? You started painting.
Yeah. So I mean, I've always been a massive like sneaker collector, trainer collector, whatever you want to say. Even like from the 80s, being in high school, there was a movement called football casuals, which some people say started in Liverpool. Some people from Manchester will say it started there. I'm not starting it, but we started it. But anyway, it was all about, even back then, having, the best kicks you could have, going to away games and coming back from Germany or somewhere with something nobody else would have. So even though sneaker culture now is just to a penny and it's like a global phenomenon, back then it kind of wasn't. So I've always been interested in sneakers. I've always loved them. And I was sitting in the studio one day and I was looking at the neon green Air Max 95s, which I had. And I was just like having a sandwich. And I was like, you know what? They are absolutely incredible. The way they've been designed, the way they echo the structure of the bones of a foot. I just thought, Jesus, I'm gonna immortalize them. I'm gonna paint one. I'm just gonna paint one. And then one turned into 10. And then 10 turned into 20. Then one got on the cover of Creative Review, which was crazy. And then Nike got in touch. And it was like, I came back to an answer phone message. I thought it was my mate winding me up. And he's like, hello, this is so-and-so from Nike. We want to work with you on a project. And I'm like, I rang my mate up going, yeah. Very funny. And it was legit. Like, anyway, so to cut a very long story short, I started working with them. I did an in-house t-shirt that went global. And then the day came when I actually got a phone call to work on my own Air Jordan, which is just crazy. And it was like, do you want to do it? And I'm like, do you want to do it? It's like, and then they sent me the template. We decided I'm doing an Air Jordan 1. They sent me the template and it was like, okay. And then the rest is kind of history. I mean, it's like I'm talking to you and I'm looking at a cabinet with them in there. And every day I come in and make a cup of tea. I'm like, did that happen? It's like, really? But the interesting thing, I mean, I've had a great relationship with them. And over the past kind of decade, we've worked on a number of projects. And the best projects I've done, hands down, not having a shoe with your name on it that you've designed, has been the philanthropy. Like the stuff I did, a project with a group of school children from Inglewood High School. And these children were so poor, they had to share their internet connection with the teacher to work on the project. And I went and worked with them. They designed it. I didn't touch it. I said that implicitly. And they worked on this mural. And Jordan went in and basically did a whole new basketball court for these kids. And these kids were they put a jamboree on, which is something you see in movies. And it was one of the most incredible days of my life. The energy these children had in a school in such a place of poverty where it's so difficult to get out of that. And these children were just the best. So the projects I've worked with Nike, have been the best ones, have been those projects.
Because they link in with a social aim.
Basically, just it's got nothing to do with, like, as I say, it's lovely to have a shoe with your name on it that you've designed, but to change somebody's life. Like the last philanthropy project I did was a project called Journey to Greatness, and it was working with the cream of the crop from all different disciplines from London colleges. So it was like the best graphic designers, the best fashion designers, and it was all about creating a product, working with like amazing athletes. I got to kind of meet them all, like Alison Felix and all of these top tier athletes. And some of these kids were out of university. They were flipping like 3 jobs, working in cafes, you know, all these kind of things. Some of them were going to give up, right? And they worked on this project, and there's 2 of them in particular who basically were going to give up, and now they've got the most amazing design agency in London, and they all got to design a t-shirt that went into Nike Town in London, and you could see it in their eyes. And I mentored it for 6 months, and it was the best thing I've ever done with Nike. It was just to see people get hope and reward, and to actually think, you know, we can do this and believe in ourselves. It was the best, much better than having a shoe with my name written on it, hands down.
It sounds amazing. It's just what you know, the sets that you can, just by giving something back, I think you used the word mentorship.
Yeah.
Earlier, I mean, you know, you being able to pass on your skills, your experience to people coming up, particularly when they've got real talent like that, and you think, actually, you know, if I just give you a little bit, that might just go a long, long way, because you've got the talent, just need a little bit of support.
Very difficult when you're in you know, deepest, darkest London, and there's rent to pay, and it's like, how am I going to keep designing? How am I going to keep painting? And it's like, some people very easily, because you have to survive, fall into it. I mean, I'm my own, as an example, I mean, when I came out of university, I taught for a while, and I loved it. I absolutely loved it. And I've got relationships with people who are my students, who still DM me on Instagram now. Like, you know, we had such a great time with it. I love it. And it got to a day, and the day was when we used to subscribe, the art college used to subscribe to certain magazines, and it's exactly what I said before. Creative Review magazine came down with the librarian, and she put it on my desk. She didn't know. And my Air Max 95 paint was on the cover. And this one kid said to me, he goes, "Sir," and I'm like, "Yeah." He goes, "Can I just ask you something?" I said, "Fire away." He goes, "What are you doing teaching us?" And it was crazy. And it was like, it was a real penny drop moment for me. And I just went, you know what, let's go. And I did. So.
It's amazing. It's amazing. So it sounds like that gives you energy. You got a lot of things that are giving you energy there. And
yeah,
you know,
yeah.
It's nice to hear about that philanthropy work, because I think there's a lot in that. And, you know, just being able to just give back and, you know,
well, I mean,
support others.
That's an ongoing thing. I mean, I get, like, you know, many like primary schools, like, and secondary schools who email me, teachers who just say, "Listen, you know, we're studying your work." I mean, that blows my mind.
Come on.
Like,
how great is that? How great is that?
Hang on. I mean, it's the same as the sneakers in the case. Someone said, "We're studying you for our art." I'm like, come on. But anyway, to cut a long story short, any teachers that reach out to me, as much as I can do it, you know, I work with them, I do Zooms with them all, and it's like, it's amazing. And I absolutely love it. Anything I can do to give back, to inspire people, it's a no-brainer. Same with charity work, Tusk, WWF, anything like that. I mean, you know, it's a no-brainer for me, hands down.
Yeah, because you do a lot with because one thing I haven't even touched on is the WWF work.
Yeah. I mean, I'm working at the moment on a really, really amazing project to do with tigers. It's going to happen later this year. And it's going to, you know, the actual painting itself is going to get auctioned off in like the Singapore Art Museum. So it's a really prestigious thing. And I'm very honored and very blessed to do it. But yeah, like any charity work that I can do, any animal work, I mean, it's just a no-brainer. It's like, you know, all I'm trying to do with my work is raise awareness of the plight of the wildlife and the state it's in the natural world. So yeah, absolutely.
And in that, when you choose I mean, now in terms of where you are currently, do you choose animals, might you choose animals specifically just so that you can make a point about saying something about them, and maybe that acts as an awareness raiser? So maybe there might be in danger of extinction or something like that.
Absolutely. I mean, the last decade, I mean, you know, shows from a show I did called Albion, which was based on wildlife in England. And it's all very well, we can sit there and click up critically endangered animals, and we know tigers and elephants and, you know, all of those things, rhinos, for instance. We know there's a top tier of what is incredibly endangered. When you look deeper, and then you start getting into sea lions and penguins and chimpanzees, and you're thinking, well, hang on a minute. And then you look over here, and you look at hedgehogs, and you look at owls, and someone says, well, listen, these things have got less than 20 years over here. I mean, that blows my mind. And it's
that's terrifying. It's terrifying.
All of my work, and like, as I say, in answer to your question, all of the shows that I produce are based on something to raise awareness. So there was, you know, Critical, Albion, all of these shows have been based on that. And that's the crux of it, really. Any animal charities that get involved, of course, I mean, you know, I'll always bespoke make something for them, and that's always a real good thing and fun thing to do. And, you know, it's an amazing thing to see, you know, them going to auction and raising a ton of money for that charity. I mean, you know, it's fantastic.
You know, it's been fascinating talking to you, Dave, but with today, I'm going to finish it up soon, but I've got to ask you, because we're recording this on Zoom, but behind you, you've got an awesome 80s arcade game. and you know, anyone watching this will be thinking, that looks amazing. Tell me about the arcade game.
Okay, so I'm 50 now. Like in 1982, graphics and video games, we used to go to arcades. So it was like, you know, I'm a massive gamer, by the way, always have been. And if I'm not painting, I'm gaming, end of. But anyway, so to cut a long story short, in 82, 83, all graphics were like pixels. So it was like Defender and kind of all these games, Space Invaders, you know, all of this stuff. And then this machine arrived from America in this local arcade that literally blew everybody's minds. And it was called Dragon's Lair. And what it is, it run off a laser disc, and it was a cartoon. So if you imagine, you see little pixels and they look a bit crappy, and then this thing arrives and it literally looks like the best cartoon you've ever seen. It blew your mind. It blew your mind. So anyway, it kind of got a bit of fame in Stranger Things. And the scene in that is amazing, because it was notorious. Where games were 10p and you got 3 lives, this thing back in the day was 50p. And it was like so difficult to play. And it's like, if you actually finished it on 1 credit in the arcade, you became a legend. You were a legend, immortal. And I've always wanted one. And like I say, I had a really special anniversary with my wife, and she got me one, which just blew my head off.
That's amazing. So, what a gift. What a gift.
Dude, I'm a lucky man in so many ways.
You really are. Yeah. That's awesome. And so your gaming is the arcade. Was the arcade? What was your sort of go-to arcade? Because I am of a similar era, and I would say Kate Bay.
So there was like, if I went to Liverpool, you had to be 18, and that was Las Vegas, and we used to sneak in and do our best and get booted out all the time. But there was 2 arcades. There was 2 in Southport. There was one called Aladdin's Palace. And I can still see the rota of what games they had. I used to go there and play Tron all the time. That was my go-to. And there was another game called another arcade called PJ's, and another one called the Golden Goose. And I used to get like £1 pocket money, and that was 10 credits. And we used to go every Saturday. We would be in there. My claim to fame, and it was almost like unbelievable, I actually finished Dragon's Lair on 1 credit when I was 14.
Wow.
And I'm telling you, I mean, it was like people patting you on the back. It's like, up until my marriage and up until, it was like the greatest day of my life. It was like, but anyway, so yeah.
That is pretty impressive, mate. Right, we're going to leave it there. Dave, thanks for talking to Art Related Noise. Really great to meet you.
Been a pleasure speaking to you. Hope to see everyone on the 30th. Thanks a lot.